Hi there, this is Natalie Thompson with GetGovernmentJobs Canada, and I'd like to welcome you to Module 5 of Getting Started with PSRS. PSRS is the Public Service Resourcing System and the website that you want to go to look for jobs in the Canadian federal government. You can get to this website by typing jobs.gc.ca into your browser's address bar. If you've been following along with the series up till now, we've gone through quite a few modules. And most recently we looked at how to use the advanced search functionality to search for job postings that are currently up for federal government jobs. Today we're actually going to take the next step and look at the job posters and then apply for one of these jobs. So the one I'm looking at, I've already done the search, and the one I'm looking at right now is this survey GIS technician with the Department of Public Works and Government Services. And you'll see from our search screen here, it's in Edmonton. It gives you a little bit of salary information, but I'm not really interested in that at the moment. I'm interested in the title of this. As you can see, the title of the position is a link, and if we click on that link, it will take us straight into the job poster for the position. One of the first things you're going to notice when you look at the job posters is there's this top block of information here, and I just want to mention that this is fairly standard. If you look at other job postings, you're going to find the same sort of information across all of them. It always gives you the department name, the location of the position. In most cases, it gives you a classification if it's an actual sort of real federal government as opposed to government but not government kind of organization. It'll give you a salary range and a closing date, and the closing date for this is March 26, so that's coming up very quickly, so we need to get our application in. The closing date is the date by which you must have your application submitted. The employment tenure tells us what type of position this is. It's telling us that this is a full-time term position, and with the contract is projected to end in October of 2012. It also gives us this little information here that says a pool of qualified candidates will be established and may be used to staff similar term and or permanent positions. So that's a really important piece of information, and you should always sort of keep in mind that when you're looking at postings that have that little blurb in there, it's even if you're not really sure that this is the exact position that you want, if there's something very similar to this, it's always worthwhile to go through the process and see if you can get into that pool. Because in the future, what happens is, as more similar positions at this group and level become available within the organization, managers who are looking to hire get referred to the pool that is created. So even if you're not hired into this particular pool, for right now it says there's one vacancy, so they're only looking to hire one person at the moment. So even if you're not that one person, if you make that pool, you could get picked up for future positions for the length of that pool. So pool lists are usually valid for usually about a year or so. Sometimes they even get extended. So that's always worthwhile to get yourself into a pool if you can. You'll also almost always going to find a link to further information on the organization, and usually that's just a link to the department's website. So you can follow that and learn more about PWGSC in this case. It will also give you information on who can apply, and usually that tells you the location, the geographical location of eligibility for people who can apply. Right now this one just says Canada and Canadian citizens residing abroad. What you will sometimes see is that this eligibility, geographical eligibility, is actually narrowed down to particular postal code groups. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at a job posting, is to check and make sure you're actually living in a place where you are allowed to apply for it. It gives you information on the citizenship. In this case it says preference will be given to Canadian citizens, but you don't necessarily have to be a citizen to apply for this position. Language proficiency will always be in these government job postings, and in this case it tells us it's an English essential position, so you don't need to be bilingual to apply for this position, but you do have to speak English. The next section is the education section, and this tells you that for this position you need to have successfully completed a post-secondary program in geomatics technology, civil engineering, or related technical discipline. But it also has this little bit at the end about acceptable combination of education, training, and experience. So if you don't have that particular post-secondary diploma, but you do have a lot of experience and training and education within that field, then you can still apply for this position. So that's good to know. Further down, it gives us this experience list, and there's always going to be something about essential qualifications, and this tells us that experience is required in each of the following areas. And there are 4 essential experience factors here, and in your application, you have to cover each of these 4 experience factors or you will get screened out of this process. The next section is the Statement of Merit Criteria, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute because that's extremely important in any government job application, is this Statement of Merit Criteria. But for right now, let's just look at the rest of the stuff in here. It talks about additional requirements and comments, and this is always a section that you want to read because there's quite a lot of text in these sections normally, but there's always some very important stuff in here, so you do want to look at it. So it tells you that you have to meet, the person appointed has to meet all of the essential qualifications, but they may be appointed to a position even though they do not meet all of the asset qualifications. So there's a difference between essential and asset qualifications. And again, we'll look at that when we look at the Statement of Merit Criteria. It tells you that there's going to be an interview for this process. It tells you that they will be asking for references. It tells you that you're going to have to provide proof of your education and citizenship. It tells you that you're going to be responsible for any travel or accommodation expenses if you have to travel to get to an interview or an exam or anything with this. And it gives you quite a bit of other information in here, so I'll let you go through these sections when you pull up your own job that you're interested in. So you want to go through all of those points in that and make sure you understand them. And the next section is information to be provided. And it says you need to provide your resume, and you have to select at least one employment type, so employment tenure, and that's something that it will actually, we'll go through and look at the behind the scenes application process, and that's where that'll be taken care of. Important messages in big red text. So it says that your resume must clearly demonstrate how you meet the requirements. And this is critical. If it's not clear, if it's not obvious, you risk getting screened out. And by screened out, we mean that your application will no longer be considered in this process. So that's something you do want to take into consideration and make sure that when you're doing your application, your cover letter, your resume, that everything is very clear and obvious to somebody else who would be looking at this. So it also gives you this little bit about committed to building a skilled and diverse workforce reflective of Canadian society. And it says that it encourages candidates to indicate voluntarily on their application if they are a woman, an Aboriginal person, a person with a disability, or a member of a visible minority group. Those are the employment equity designated groups for the federal government of Canada. I always recommend that if you fit one of these equity groups, that you always self-identify as being so when you apply for these positions or when you're setting up your account, because it may just give you that edge in getting the position. If everything else is equal and it comes down to 2 candidates who have equal abilities, equal background, equal skills in every other respect, that they can use that as a deciding factor. If one person has self-identified as being part of an equity group and the department has decided that they need to increase their representativeness in that particular equity group, that can be used as the deciding factor as to which candidate gets hired. So always self-identify if you do fit one of these groups. So I just want to take a quick look at the Statement of Merit Criteria here, because as I said, the SOMC is another way you'll hear it referred to, or SOMC in some cases. This is the be-all and end-all of government applications. Everything, and I mean everything is based on these statement of merit criteria. I'm actually not going to spend a lot of time on this in this video just because this is such an important thing. I'm actually going to do a separate blog posting about this because it deserves its own focus. But you'll see that a lot of the information in here is just repeated from the job posting. So it gives you the education, the language, the experience factors, but it also has this knowledge and abilities and personal suitabilities, condition of employment, operational requirements, and these asset qualifications. Just a quick note that as we talked about earlier in the video, the difference between the essential experience factors and the asset criteria, or the asset qualifications, is that the person appointed to this position must meet all of the essential criteria, but may or may not meet the asset qualifications. Asset qualifications are things that the hiring committee can use in the assessment process if they wish to, but they do not have to. So if you meet any of these asset qualifications, you do want to make sure that they are mentioned clearly in your application and your resume. So having said that, I'm just going to click on my back button and get back to the job poster. So we've looked at this job poster and we've decided that, yeah, I want to apply for this. So you scroll down to the bottom, and at the bottom of all of these job posters, there's just a text link that says apply online, and we're going to click on that, and it's going to take us back to this login screen, which should look familiar to you from previous videos, and we'll scroll down to the PSRS login box, and your username is the email that you set up when we did the video on setting up your PSRS account. So I'll just let you go ahead and type that in. And then the password that you set up when you set up the account. And click on the login button. And that has brought us into our account. And you'll see that the job poster that I clicked on apply online is now showing up in this little chart up here. And then there's this notice that you need to read when you're applying. So it says that you need to, basically it says you need to be truthful and honest in your application. Any false or fraudulent information will most likely get you kicked out of this process. The other thing to note is that if you do lie on your application or provide any kind of false or fraudulent information and you get hired and they find out about this, they can and most likely will revoke your appointment. So just to keep that in mind, and you will want to read through this page carefully yourself when you're doing this and make sure you understand all the information on here. For now, there's a confirmation at the bottom, so you need to click on the I confirm button once you've read this and click on continue. And that takes us to this My Jobs file page. And you'll see that job opportunities submitted, we have no submitted applications at the moment. But if you scroll down a little further, there's this job opportunities in progress section, and here's the job that we've just applied for. And we haven't actually applied for this yet. We've just added it to our job file, and you'll notice, and this should look familiar again, this list of items that we have to set up here. And we've got a few little green check marks, but lots of nasty little red X's again that we're going to have to change to green check marks. So you'll see some of them are already done. And we've got a few other things in here that we have to fix. So resume, other requirements, work location, classification, all have to be changed into X's. So I'm actually going to start with classification because that's the quickest and easiest. And it says, so this is an EG2, which was not specified when we originally set up our account. So you have to click on it and explicitly say, yes, I want to apply for this type of position, and click on save. And you'll see that's now a green check mark. Work location, if you click on that, it says we didn't set up Alberta in the first, or at least I didn't when I set up this account, so I am going to click that now and click on continue. And Edmonton region works, so I'll click on continue. And I'm going to click on back, and that takes me back to here, and you'll see that's a green check mark now. Now there's two other boxes here. So resume, if we click on resume, it takes us to this resume box. So there's two ways that you can do this. If you have already saved a resume to your profile, you'll see there's a button here for load resume from profile. So you can click on that and it will bring in the resume that you had already saved to your account, and you can click on save. If you haven't done that, you can just copy and paste your resume from whatever word processor you happen to have it saved in. Just be sure that if you're going to do that, that you take a quick look at it, or at least actually more, you should probably take a detailed look at it if you're doing a cut and paste, just to make sure that there aren't any strange formatting things that have happened when you're copying from a word processor to this plain text-based box here. If you're going to do the copy and paste, you'll notice there's two buttons here. There's Save and there's Save Resume to Application and Profile. Clicking on Save will just save that resume to this particular application. Save Resume to Application and Profile will save it to the application and also to your account profile in general, so that you can use it for future processes. So for now, I'm just going to click Save. And I've got my green check mark. And here's this other requirements. So other requirements, this is a very long page, and you're going to see this very often in the government applications. It'll either say other requirements or it'll actually just say questionnaire. And basically what it is, it's going to ask you a list of questions that this is a screening tool. So the questions that are on here will have to do with the experience and asset qualifications that are listed in the job poster and statement of merit criteria. So this can be quite a long, drawn-out questionnaire depending on how many asset and essential criteria factors are in the job poster. So you actually have to go through and answer each of these questions, and I will say that if it is an essential criteria factor, you must answer the question. Because this is a screening tool, if you say no to an essential criteria factor and don't answer the question, you will get screened out immediately. The system itself, the computer system itself, will screen out this application before any human eyes have even seen it. So if you don't have an essential experience factor, there's really no point in you wasting your time and applying for the particular process, because you will definitely get screened out. The way that I usually deal with these questionnaires is I just go through and I copy the whole screen. And then what I do is I either paste it into my Microsoft Word, because I happen to have a PC. If you're using Mac, you can paste it into Pages or whatever you're using, or just into a text thing like Notepad, and just copy and paste. And I answer the questions in the word processor or the Notepad application, just because it's easier for me to think when I can see everything easily on screen. And the fact that these boxes are on the PSRS site are really quite small, so I really don't like that when I'm having to type in lots of text. I like to be able to see my whole answer all at once. So that's my recommendation. If you're happy working in these little boxes, then you're good to go just doing that. So we're going to want to type some answers in here. And I'm just going to grab some text just so we have stuff to put in so you can see how this works. You will want to answer these properly, of course, and in detail. So we're going to go through, put some answers in all of these, and click on Save. And you'll see that we now have green check marks and everything. And the next thing that you have to do is actually submit the application. Up until this point, you have not submitted this application yet. It's just saved to your account in your jobs list, but it is not submitted. So until you have that green X, it's not actually out there, and that's something to keep in mind, because there are always closing dates on these, and you want to make sure you have submitted it before the closing date. So I'm going to click on Submit Application. And it gives you this little declaration screen, so I confirm and understand that the information I've provided is true and complete. Just go through and read that short little declaration. If you agree, click on I agree. And it asks you, in some cases, sometimes it asks you to participate in a research project. If you're interested, you can. If not, you can say, no, we're not interested. I'm going to say not interested. And it brings me back to my jobs file page. And you'll see that I now have in this job opportunities submitted, the Survey GIS technician position is now in here. And what you can do with this, you can retrieve this file up until the closing date. Once that closing date is passed, you will not be able to retrieve it. You can retrieve it and make modifications to it up until the closing date. Or you can just view what you've submitted. So let's view. And it gives you sort of a different look at what you've done here. And all the information that you put in your previous when you set up your account is in there. And when you scroll a little further down, you see all your answers to the screening questions that you did, and your resume is at the bottom. So if you like that, just click back and you're done. And you can go click on this My Jobs menu button down at the bottom, and that takes you, it always gives you this screen, which I find a little bit irritating just because I know I've already submitted it, but you have to click on Continue. And it takes you back to your My Jobs menu. And if you look in here, there's one more link I do want to show you really quickly, is this application status link. And if you click in here, all the jobs that you have applied for will show up in this application status. And it tells you that you've been included in the inventory for this. So at some point they're going to screen this and you'll get further information to the email that you set up in your account. So we've applied for this position and now we just wait. Or we can go through, do some more searches, and apply for more positions. And that's basically how the job posters and application process works with PSRS. I hope you found that useful. This was the 5th and final video in the Getting Started with PSRS series. You can find the rest of the series on my website at get-government-jobs.com. And hope to see you again in future videos. Thank you.